You're listening to the Electrocasts podcast. This is podcast number 26. Returning to our show, we're happy to speak with Vancouver-based pianist-composer Vlada Mars. Vlada's new album, Melancholy, will be available on May 31st at vladamars.com and on iTunes.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining another installment of Electrocast. This is Jeff, and Case is out there somewhere in the woods of Rhode Island.
I am.
Case, are you out there?
Actually, I'm not too far from the beach.
Ah, good evening, Case.
Yeah.
You have the sea breeze tickling your skin, right?
Well, actually, it is a small fan in the corner of the room.
And on the other coast, and slightly north of us, we have Vlada Mars. Hey, Vlada, welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Vlada.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on the show again. So.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk to you guys again.
It's like a year ago, isn't it?
It was.
Yes, I think it was April last year when we did. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and you had just released Woman's Love, right? It's a couple months before that.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And we're here especially to talk to you about your new album, Melancholy, which is going to release on the 31st of May. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Vlada, can you tell everybody who's listening where they can get your album and in which formats?
So, as of May 31st, it will be available through my website. There will be a download to be bought by whatever price you name it. And there is a signed CD copy of the actual CD that will be selling for 20 Canadian dollars. And probably a couple of weeks later, the album will be available through CD Baby and iTunes and Amazon and everything else. But I wanted to first have it just through me and give people a chance to, enjoy through me and not going through the other online resources and everything. So that
Very
was
nice.
the idea.
It's nice when you offer folks options, right?
Yes.
You know, I had enormous pleasure listening to this album. I listened to it a couple of times, and it is similar in atmosphere to your prior album, but I like of the whole of the album, there seems to be more of an ebb and flow between somewhat faster-paced songs and then somewhat slower-paced, which seems almost go very well with the idea of melancholy, which has this ups and down feelings. But before we go into that, as I was listening to the album a couple of times, more and more I got the feeling that a lot of your tracks were very well suited for singing, for vocals. And lo and behold, I believe it's the last track, and we'll listen to it later, you're actually singing.
Yes, I do, and that's like a big surprise. So, and you're right. I was thinking about that and why there is so much voice. And not only you notice that. I have a couple of friends who are musicians who listen to the tracks way before I recorded them. I played them on different occasions, and they will come to me and said, "Vlad, I hear a song here. You have to compose a song. You have to put your voice in and everything." And that was a big wish of mine as well, but it took me a long time to get there and to actually do it.
Well, it's, a lot of the songs, like as I was writing notes for myself and later shared them with you, I was thinking like chanson, a French, like story of life, right? The chanson as a genre.
Yes,
true.
And
while, obviously, and we've talked about this before, you are a classically trained pianist, where does this influence come from?
Well, that's a very good question. So I grew up, as some people know, in Serbia, with former Yugoslavia was. And the influences of music was not just Western English or British or American music. We grew up with a lot of Italian music as an influence and really a lot of French music. And especially because when I was a child, my dad used to work a lot in France, in Paris. So we would be traveling. And the French music was something that was all the time on the, record player, and we will be listening to that. And when when I think of what will be the influence of, French song like Yves Montand or, even Edith Piaf, but even a little bit modern one going through the music now, I really, really enjoy French music still. One of my favorite bands of all time is the French band called Air. That is the ultimate, my favorite band. And I also love Thierry Corporation. So there is a lot of melodious songs there and music that probably unconsciously influence me, but I wasn't aware of it, that when you said French song, I was thinking, wow, you're right, so yes.
It's funny how those influences just come out of us, and it's so much part of our musical biology, our musical DNA.
Yeah, if it's inside of you, it'll always find a way out, even without you desiring, it'll just happen.
Yes, for sure.
But I was interested, like many of your titles, talk about and deal with relationships, which is something that is at the heart of the chanson, the stories of life, and often also, it's kind of like the French blues in a way, isn't it?
It's true. And each song has a, like when you look at the lyrics of the French chansons or the French poetry, it's really about life and relationships for sure.
Yeah. So what has happened to you over this past year? Are you willing to let us in on some things?
Yes, for sure. So since we parted in April, I actually traveled in summer. So I spent almost 2 months back home in Serbia, and I traveled a little bit to Holland and Greece. And I have to say that one of my pieces there, it's called Innocence, is actually, I composed it while I was in Belgrade last summer. And it was very interesting because it's based on a very, very old Bosnian song. And those songs are like in the blood of people there. They are very sentimental, the words are always really, really heavy and thick of melancholy and thick of emotions. And so all this influences while I was in Belgrade last year happened to me to bring more memories of childhood, of growing up, which also can be a melancholy memory in all of us. Yeah.
Right.
So
and you're talking about melancholy as a sense of longing, right?
Yes, sense of longing for something that it's long gone or something that never came. Yeah.
Right.
So both ways, it goes both
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah.
And then after I toured a little bit, so I had a concert here, and I went first time to Ottawa and Toronto again, and that was really lovely experience, especially in Ottawa, where a Serbian embassy actually organized the concert of mine, and I had a chance to play in front of 40 ambassadors here in Canada, and who never heard of my music before, never knew anything about me. And that was really amazing experience to see how well received was my music, my poetry too, because I was reading a couple of poems that I wrote. And it's, it just put me on a ease that no matter if you know me, if you're a friend of mine and come to listen to me because you just want to support me, or if I go to completely unknown environment and play, that my music somehow connect us and have that universal message to everybody. So that was really, really great experience.
So weren't you nervous to be in front of all those, highfalutin root people?
Yeah, it was really funny because, I started it and then I was in the heels and my heels were slipping, on a pedal, and I couldn't, focus on pieces, and I started making mistakes, and I'm like, oh my God. But then it really went easy, and they were so receptive and so warm towards me because, there were people from all around the world, when you think of that, and who came just to support music. So they went to many, many concerts before. They actually appreciate, what you have to give. And so it was really lovely experience.
Well, that's excellent. Did that play into Drive at all? Did that tour play into Drive? You put a lot of miles on, probably in the air.
Yes.
But that your opening track on the new album Melancholy, called Drive, has a very obviously a driving sort of rhythm to
energetic,
but it does sound like it could be from anywhere. It could be. It sounds very universal in that way.
Well, the Drive is actually very personal, and it was dedicated to a friend of mine who I met through Twitter. He's at his Prince Madness, and his name is Darren. And Darren is actually a good friend, and he is driving a truck. And all night long, and he would post things from his driving trips and stuff. But also behind him, there is a story that always touched me really deeply, that his brother was killed very young. It was 9 years ago, and it was on actually Darren's birthday. And when you listen to Drive, there is that constant move of somebody driving, but then at some point there is those arpeggios that come, and to me that's tragedy that happened to a family, that somebody was taken from them out of nonsense. And so I wanted to really do a little tribute to our friendship, to all the support he gave to me last 2 years as regards to my music, and that's how I composed the Drive.
Beautiful. I love those sections where you go into the sextuplet arpeggios. I mean, and you've done that before, and I've always said, "Oh,
I did. Yes,
that's one of your trademarks, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. But I also was a little surprised, to hear that as the first track, and particularly given, when you get a title of your album to be Melancholy, and the first track to me was almost like sort of an open, breezy, happy feel to it.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit now, and now it makes so much sense now that you explain it.
Yes. Yeah.
But your album does have, and we'll listen to another more upbeat or up-tempo kind of a piece. So how did you think about where you placed your songs and sort of almost create an ebb and flow between the tracks?
Well, I actually placed them in the order they were composed. And I think that was I was thinking a lot, and took me a long, long time to actually get to do this album. I composed between Women's Love and now 23 new pieces. And that's quite a lot for 1 year.
Yes.
And it was a really, where do I go with this? And it took me really a long time to come in terms what I really want to show this time. Many pieces that are dear to me are not on the album, and maybe never will see the world, and it doesn't matter. But I decided to put them in the way they were composed, because that's the way how I felt them. And it has a little, just the way how I felt, how I changed, evolved. And what is, for me, was interesting is that a Drive and the last piece, Awakening, has a very similar rhythms, very similar. So it kind of made a whole circle of where I started and where I ended, So.
Well, I think we should take a listen to Drive. I think we've made...
Yeah, this is the lead-off track from Vladimir's new album called Melancholy here on Electrocast. This is called Drive. Vlada, I had the pleasure of tapping a couple people who you know on Twitter and asking them if they had a question for you about your music and about the new album.
Hey.
And one of the questions comes from your Twitter friend, Just a Lady, who is Deus Lady. And she's a big fan of your music. She loves you. And she has a question that kind of meshes well in with what I wanted to ask you, too. She was curious about your composing process. And I'm curious about that, too. What goes through your mind as you make your compositional choices?
So the process goes from whatever inspired me at that moment and whatever event happened in my life. I would be thinking about it for a few days. I would feel a tingle in my fingers for a few days. I will just sit and play. And I could never explain that it has not, obviously I have this experience of being classically trained, growing up with music all my life. Music is part of who I am, so that all comes out. But I never thought of any of my compositions in technical terms. Why would I do this or that? And once I played it, for me, that piece is done. And I will record it right away and I'll just put it on a side and come back to it. But I will never redo it. I will never add anything. I will never change anything. And I call that music is that I just simply catch the moments. And those are the moments that you cannot go back and change. You cannot go back into past and just change the moment.
So once you have a structure down that you're happy with and you're getting through what you want, and once you get through the piece from start to finish, that's pretty much suitcased.
Yes, and it take me between 5 and 20 minutes. It's really crazy, and that's why when I wanted to do a song with singing, it took me really a while because I don't know how to approach that, having this experience how I'm composing just instrumental music. So I didn't think, what should I do? What will be my process? Lyrics or chords or melody. And when I actually compose it, it all came at once.
That's good.
Same as everything else. So the words just, blurb out of my mouth. The chords were there. The music is there. So that's it.
Speaking about the song Touch, which we will hear later on. Yeah. I remember you talking about that. I remember you asking, I think you asked me or somebody else, or I was in on the conversation, how do I do this? And I said, I don't know.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Because I felt a lot of, not like a pressure, but everybody was asking, when you're going to connect your words with music? You're there. Just do it. Just do it. And I'm like, how?
Well, Vlada, what struck me about your voice is you have a very nice vibrato, natural vibrato in your voice. And I'm not sure if you use that consciously or if this is just how you sing.
But you should know I'm actually musically training my voice. I took classes for 8 years, opera singing. Okay. Yeah, and jazz singing. And and I'm now for a few years singing in a choir. Yeah, so I've always sang. And I have problems in my house when, I sing all the time and they don't appreciate that very much. Because every word that they say, it connects me with the lyrics of the song. So I just burst in a song. Right. But I'm actually opera trained, which is really funny to say, but I am. And I sang a lot of arias. I'm a soprano. I have a very, very big range of my voice too. So I guess it comes from that training.
And what I also liked about the track Touch, where you're singing, is that you are not coloring your voice with effects. I think it is reverb minimally. It is just very, very honest and as it is, as we would.
Yeah, Vlada, did you sing that when you were playing it, or did you overdub the vocal?
I did. I sang and played at the same time. That was the only way I could do it. Yeah, we decided to just go with a plain voice to make it really raw, make it really emotional as it is, and not add any of the effects or change it or whatever it could be done. Right. And because that's how it is. Yeah, that's again a moment. Yeah, so it's the same thing.
So let's listen to Touch. I think it would be kind of fun because it is the last track of your album, and you said you felt it connected very well with the first track that we just listened to. So Jeff, what do you think? Why don't we listen to Touch?
I think that would be great. Here is Vlada, Flying Without Wings, the vocal track, first ever recorded vocal track from Vlada Mars on her new album Melancholy. This is called Touch here on Electrocasts.
Can words replace the touch? How can this be true? I'm still wondering, longing for you. Embrace me in your dreams tonight. How can words replace the touch? How can this be true? I'm still wondering, longing for you. You said I'm too much, too fast, too soon. Words cling to my skin. How can this be true? I'm still wondering, longing for you. It's you I want, just come to me.
So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that track very much, and it, like I said earlier in the show, it was a real big surprise for me because I basically listened to your album sequentially to prepare for this interview, and I was just constantly making notes like, wow, this needs a voice,
Yes.
or it could have. It's very vocal, but I also find, and we may have talked about this last time, Vlada, but I also find that your music creates a lot of imagery, and particularly in the faster pieces, this sense of motion, like driving through a lane with trees on both sides, and the trees kind of like zooming by, and then how that motion connects to emotion.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that? So you described your process, that it's very spontaneous, and that it comes out of your emotions and your emotions,
Yes.
so
yes.
to speak.
Yes. So, what can I say? Sometimes when there is as an artist, I experience all these feelings that are just bursting out of me, and all that passion that will cost my life probably one day. But
It would have been worth it, though.
yes, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but
Sure.
it's sometimes I'm so stormy inside of myself, and all those feelings cannot be they have to go out, and they have to go out in a fast motion, in a fast speed, and lots of I wouldn't say anger, but angst, and
Right.
lots of passion, because I don't feel that I can calm them down with anything slow and nice and arpeggio. So they have to come out in a fast motion, and they just have to burst out of me. And
Right. It's like a
and
release.
it's kind of a release, and it's taking a lot of throughout this process of working on this CD. I experienced so much storms in me, so much failures in my own eyes, that I can't come and go and play again, because every time I will go to try to practice towards the recording,
Right.
I will experience exactly same emotions that I experienced while I was composing, and that took a big toll on me, and I got sick again, physically sick.
Sure.
And while I was practicing for a month of April, very intensely, I was really, really sick. And I guess it all came out, which is kind of good thing too, that everything that I kept inside me came out, and in a way of the release. And once I was done recording, 2 hours, I was completely healthy.
Oh.
So it's really, I call this like a crazy, I can see, why Chopin, for example, always was coughing because of his tuberculosis. But, there are records that he was, on every single concert, he was coughing,
Wow.
while Beethoven has alcohol problems, So I see that kind of madness in me more and more as I'm getting older. And it scares me also, but I'm happy that it came out, and I did it, and I recorded a CD, and I'm still here. So.
And we're very happy
Thanks.
for it. So, so you also play very nicely with the timing in your playing, and a track that I would like to listen to in just a little bit is called Touch of Melancholy. And I know Jeff has a different interpretation of this, but Your timing and your phrasing, it's like you're not playing the note exactly on the measure, but either just before or just after. And so you take the listener into a suspended moment. And, like you almost have a hesitation in a step. And then as a listener, I'm already wanting to take this step. So it's a really nice way that you keep the listener on the edge. But can you talk a little bit about how you use timing and phrasing in your playing?
Well, it's all about connected with how I feel. And the one thing about this whole album, Melancholy, was it's completely inspired differently from previous one, Woman's Love, which was inspired by women. This new album is completely inspired by men. And so what I notice with men in my house, with my very close friends, when I went back home and talked to my men friends or here, is the way we're aging, and we are all in a sort of way. There is more and more melancholy in men that I find than in a woman, and that comes from all the pressure that they have to live with, work-wise, family-wise, trying to balance their passions that they had since young age or childhood, either if that's music or a passion for words, whatever it is, and not finding enough time to do all that. And so when I change the tempos and when I change the pace of the music, when I pause, I always think that the best moments in our life are always in between. Yeah. So is it in between two breaths? Is it in between two notes? But those little moments of silences that give us just a little like that moment of waiting, what is next to come. And I really like to play with that in my music, and I do it quite often because I found those are the most precious moments in life that we have, when they happen unexpectedly in between, when they pause life, when they pause the world, when the world stops and you can actually just be. Yeah. So
and they are opportunities for little moments of reflection then, right?
True.
Yeah.
Yes. True.
Very nice. So why is it called Touch of Melancholy? Because is that related to what you were explaining to us about your impression of how men experience melancholy?
Well, it was inspired. There was a death in my family, and my mother-in-law actually passed away, and she was very sick in a time when I was composing that. And at the same time, a friend of mine has that in his family. And this is kind of reflection that you will not be able to be in with those people anymore. You won't be able to feel their love anymore. And at the same time, you're grateful forever that you actually experienced all that during your life. So it's very mixed emotion. So that's the reason I called it Touch of Melancholy. There is a melancholy, but there is also, it's just one touch, and it's also, there is a gratefulness and a happiness that you, while you were alive, had a chance to be in a presence of people that mold you and that made you who you are. So,
but the word touch here is a metaphor for it, like a physical touching, right? It is because sometimes we say like a touch of something, and it means just a little bit of it.
Yes. But that's what I thought too. It's a little bit touch of melancholy.
And it also connects with the last track on the album too, where you get the touch.
Absolutely, but that was different then.
Right, but it adds a continuity.
Yes.
It adds a continuity, which I always like in a piece of art.
Yes, true.
From Vladimir's new album called Melancholy, maybe it's kind of a title track in a way. This is called Touch of Melancholy on Electrocasts. So, Vlada, you were a fan of David Bowie. Did his death affect you much, and did that play a part in this album at all?
Not in this album. So I was actually checking when you mentioned that as one of the questions. The last track that I composed, which is Awakening, was the beginning of January, maybe 10 days before his death. And I don't know how my music after, is going to sound. We will see. But it affected me tremendously as a person who grew up with Bowie as an idol and be there. And, it's like losing a member of family. And just, 4 days later, my mother-in-law passed away too.
Wow.
So it was really, really hard times for all our family. As some of you know, both me and my husband, we changed our last name to Mars because of David Bowie, because of Life on Mars. So that's one of the things that we grew up. And the very strange thing is when it was his birthday on January 8th, and the new album came out, The Black Star. And we bought it, we downloaded it, from iTunes right away. And I said, I have to go and buy a record. And I just felt that I need to have a physical sense of that album.
Right.
And I went the same day, it was Friday, and to the record store, and I bought the Black Star. And I came home and I was just amazed. The look, the design, the sound, and the whole meaning came 2 days later when he passed away. And there's some people when they die, they just change the perspective. And I think what he did with the Black Star is equal to what Mozart did with Requiem. It's just amazing death album, the album about dying, it just, very, very amazing.
It was, and it was so, in retrospect, it couldn't have been timed better.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
For such a dramatic ending.
Yeah, it looks like a plant, everything was orchestrated from somewhere. It's amazing.
Life's always stranger than fiction. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to our conversation about timing and phrasing. And before we started recording this show, we talked about fractions. And as many people know by now, I do a lot of things with mathematics. And one of the things I do is help people become teachers of mathematics. But the track Story of Us is in 3/4 time, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's a more higher tempo. You don't do many pieces in 3/4 time, and actually it took me a couple of initial listens to realize that it was in 3/4, because you don't play the humpapa version of 3/4.
No, I will probably think this is more like a 6/8, maybe to me. Yeah.
It has a gallop to it.
Gallop to it, but I do actually compose in 3/4. I have a couple of waltzes that I composed past year. They just didn't fit on this album, and I'm thinking maybe because they were composed. There were a couple of people that inspired me to compose a waltz that I felt. That upbeat in their life, but it didn't go well with the whole concept of melancholy to put a waltz in it.
and waltzes are generally also associated in a romantic sense, right?
Yes,
not in a melancholic sense.
No, yes, exactly.
So,
but story of Us, I would probably think it's a 6/8. I didn't even put my music into notes yet. I'm gonna do that during the summer. So, but I will think yes. But it's still 1 2 3 1 2 3 beat to it.
Yes.
So,
but like I said, it's not like in a polka sense, right? Or in a humpapa.
No, no, not at all.
And one of the things I noticed about Story of Us is that there is a real nice distinction between a lot of the upper right-hand melodic ideas and the drive, the pounding octaves, actually, in some sections, in your left hand. And it kind of really, to me, obviously it told a story, but do you have a story that you're trying to tell when you compose this song especially, but in general?
Well, yes, and I wrote that today. I was thinking about it. So what will be the story of us? The story of us is about all of us, how we connected. So especially, three of us here, we connected through words and through music. And we didn't have chance yet to connect in person, But those are the little bridges that we build as people that we kind of not always put a lot of thinking about it. So what is our story? What is the story between me and my friend? What is the story between me and my family? How does it evolve during the life? Right. As my kids are growing up, so it's more now of texting and talking on a phone than touch. And but it all comes to those little bridges, little connections that make us human, and that we all long for. We long to have something behind us, the stories that we told our kids, the story that was told to us by parents or grandparents, and it all comes up to that big moment that is the story of us, that is story that the story is what connects us, and the story is we what forget often to do now in a modern world, to tell it, to explain it, to feel it. So that's what came into the story of us.
I think that's lovely. It's very well known in educational research that people make sense of their lives from very young children to very old children through the stories they tell. And in days gone by, people would literally sit around and tell each other stories, and now we write blogs, right? and I think blogs have sort of the same function. It's just that we don't always know who is sitting with us with our story. And so I think, like, when I send something out on Twitter, I always feel like I'm throwing something in the wind, and then who knows where it's going to land. And where you talk about the story of us, you talk about something more tangible, more connected.
More connected, But we do connect, and we, in some ways, maybe it's not perfect, and maybe it's not enough, but we actually do connect, and we have to cherish the connection and make them tangible one day.
Well, that's why we started Electrocast, exactly for that reason. We hope we get to meet you. We have met some 20 other people in person this way, and it has enriched our life, Jeff's and my life, tremendously. And we hope that this is a deeper way of touching by talking about your art, about your music, and how your life plays a role in that. And
absolutely.
And this is why we love talking to you, Vlada.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's such a privilege.
And you know what, Vlada, I mean, especially somebody who, because I'm obviously a big fan of your words as well. I read you every day, and you know that. But, I feel like I know a lot of different stories just from what you write and how it relates to your music, and what you have to get out of you when you play, and what you have to put into it when you write, and all that. So, it's just another level of connection that I'm very grateful to have.
So let's dedicate the story of us to this connection that the three of us having right now, and to
the Skype connection,
and to the connections meaningful connections that people can make all over the world, artists and musicians all over the world. I think it's a very nice thought, and I want to thank you for offering that kind of thought through your music, Vlada. So take us to Story of Us, Jeff, if you would.
Yeah. So pick a partner and stand, and this is a dance. This is called The Story of Us here on Electrocast. So I have another question. This one comes from Jackie Prebish. And Jackie wants to know, which muse do you conjure up the most when you're composing music? Is it the fiery muse or the sexy muse or the lover or the one that's a little bit insane, which is her favorite one? Which muse usually visits you most often?
But I think it's, everything, it's like all of that all together. But there is that, as I talked earlier, that passion and that madness in me that I feel more and more, and who knows where it's going to take me next. And the notion that I'm scared of it is actually pushing me to explore it, because that's how we do, and that's what we did too. So exploring, pushing the boundaries of your own comfort zone. So if I'm very uncomfortable with my madness because I don't know where it's going to take me, my insanity, I think that's what I have to do. That's something that has to be out. And with this album, when I look back and I listen a lot of my music in the past few weeks that I wrote at the beginning, in the middle, and now, I think that no matter if you don't hear it, in my melancholy melodies and stuff, but I feel those emotions of insanity, of love, of everything I felt during the past few months came out. And it's very uncomfortable for me now thinking, okay, on Tuesday, it will be there for the world to hear. But again, this is something that I had to share, and I can't keep anymore for myself. I have to let go of it. I have to, put it out. So I think it's insanity, the muse of insanity.
The muse of insanity. Yeah, this is the one who visits you the most frequently, or has the most impact anyway. Yeah, but Vlada, when you release music to the world, I mean, Kays and I know this because we release music to the world.
Yes.
But when you release music to the world, you don't know how somebody's going to hear it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And like I said earlier, you throw it in the wind, and you don't know what journey it will take. And I think that, to me, that is an enormous release, because I basically lose all control after I put it out. When I say it's done, I'm giving up complete control over what it is.
Absolutely.
And it's very liberating. Yeah. It's scary, but it's liberating too.
Yes, true. But it's in that sense that we always say, oh, you have to let it go. We say that a lot, and I always have a little like, no, I don't want to let it go. I want to keep it for myself. But in a way, it teaches me to learn that it's, it is mine. It will always be mine because of the feelings and emotions that only I know of. But it, in a sense, is like, phew, like a big exhale. It's out, and it has to be out, and it has to, maybe, just do its magic and fly with the wind.
Yeah. Right.
So that's it.
Yeah. So, Vlada, you have us over to dinner, and after dinner you play some music. What do you play
what's
for
us? Dinner? Let's talk about that first.
Oh, okay. Are you vegetarians or vegans?
No. Just don't worry about that. Like, the two of us, we're just arbitrary people. So what would be for dinner? Come on, I want to know. What would you...
I will probably go with Italian. So Italian is my favorite food. So all kind of, not just pasta, but all kind of Italian food. I really like... I'm lucky to live on this coast, West Coast in British Columbia. So we have amazing fish and salmon, so that will be my second favorite. And after I feed you, I will probably sit you in my living room, and you will have to listen to Black Star over and over and over again, as it is now. Yeah, so I'm... there is a music that, I don't know if you guys have that it becomes your obsession. It becomes that you can't, there is an albums that you always want to listen and always hear something new about it. And definitely at this moment, it will still be after, 5 months, still will be a Black Star. But maybe for Jeff, I'll put little Billie Holiday at the end.
Oh, now you're talking.
Oh, nice. Nice.
You know I love Billie. Yeah.
Or a very good Canadian singer is Madeleine Peru.
Madeleine Peru, yeah, it's true. Yes.
And she does, she sings in her own style, but it's reminiscent of Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday, yes.
Yeah.
I just actually went to Serbia in March, and I brought the Billie Holiday record that was mine from all times, and it is like a rare records, rare live recordings of Billie Holiday. So it's quite nice.
Yeah, can imagine.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Vlada, track 9 and 10 have very similar but subtly different names. Your 9th track of the album is called Aloneness, and the 10th track is called Loneliness. And I think loneliness is often not a pleasant thing for people, but what is the subtle or not so subtle difference in your experience of aloneness and loneliness?
Again, this was inspired by men and how they manage their time off. Let's put it this way. Yeah. So I will say aloneness is something you choose, something you wish
like
for.
Like a solitude?
It's like a solitude, yeah. And something you want when you want to be away from the world, away from everybody, wandering the woods or sitting on the beach, hiking, playing guitar, whatever brings you that moment when you are with yourself and where you're happy to be just with yourself. And sometimes your loved ones will find that selfish, so as you're running away from whatever is going on in a house or problems or whatever, but it's something that we all need. And in the world that is so busy, unless we connect with ourselves, what is left, So that will be aloneness. And then there is a loneliness, and we all experience it, no matter if we are surrounding with loving family, with kids, with loving colleagues at work, with the students that we teach. There is always something that sometimes we feel that even in a crowd, we feel very lonely. And this is I think, the illness of this civilization, the loneliness of a small person that cannot be what it wanted to be, that cannot give what is inside of them, and it's a disease. It's really, really, and it can bring a depression. It can bring mental disease. It can bring isolation, and we're trying our best to connect, but I think it's harder and harder to connect, with people, with people that think similar to us, that feel us, that have compassion, to us.
So aloneness is a desire for connecting with the self, with yourself,
yes.
And loneliness is a desire or a melancholy for connecting with
others.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Very nice. I hadn't thought of it that way, so I'm so happy I asked you.
And that's why I put them both in the same key. That it wasn't planned, but when I actually listened, I was like, look, they're in C minor, so it makes complete sense.
Yes.
Because there is a very little, the subtle difference, between aloneness and loneliness.
Right.
It just, it can go and be one at one point. Yeah. So that happened.
Yeah. So, Vlad, is there anything else about your new album that you want to share with listeners out there?
Well, yeah, this album is actually specific and fond for me that two of my pieces were composed in Belgrade, in the city where I was born. And those are the Innocence and Awakening. So Innocence, which I talked a little bit before, was also inspired by two of my very good friends from Vancouver who decided to leave Vancouver and go back to live in Belgrade after 25 years in Canada. Mm-hmm. And it brought me thinking that, do I really, what is my next step in life? When kids are bigger, do I want to stay here or go back to the roots and go back to the childhood? And Awakening, which is kind of, I wanted to go back into where I started. And the first piece I ever composed is called L'attente, or Waiting. And it was in the key of E minor. And I really wanted to, which I always found the key that resonates the best with me. And I wanted to do the key of E minor again, but I didn't know exactly what. And then I was inspired by one of the writers on Twitter. His Twitter name is Vincent van Gogh, and his writings, and somehow it came out to me, the key of E minor and Awakening, almost like a new beginning. And so, yes, there is a melancholy, there is a sadness of the past year that took a couple of people from my life that I really, really loved. But there is also a new beginning, and that was the first time that I actually composed something to resonate with my very first beginning when I started to compose, and to open the door for myself to let go and move on from all the experiences and see what's next. So.
Beautiful. So, Vlada, how old were you when you started playing
the piano? I was 7.
7. And how old were you when you started composing? You mentioned your first composition. How old were you then?
I was 42.
42. Okay.
Well, it is a multiple of 7.
Right.
It took me a long time.
You never had the itch when you were playing, when you were growing up playing when you were little, to make up your own little tunes? You never had the
it was such a strict my education that didn't leave any way of improvisation, and it took me a long time to get rid of it, and starting to be myself.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what music is about.
So, I have a request. The 4 tracks that we have listened to, were suggested by you, and we're glad to honor that. But there is one track that I like so much that I would love to be able to ride out on it, and it is the track called "Random Thoughts." And in there, there are some very clear and beautiful and gorgeous and delicious bluesy lines. And what's your affinity with blues? I mean, to me, it is the root of all music that I know, but...
All music. Yeah.
Obviously not... Yeah, go ahead.
And again, I wouldn't, I didn't think about that. So Random Thoughts came out of those moments when we're awake at 3 a.m., at 4 a.m., at 5 a.m., and our mind is just wandering around, and in some moments we're very sad and very lonely, and in some moments we're very, very happy, and but the thoughts are free. They're, it's quiet, in those times of the night. And so there is no censorship in our thoughts. There is nothing, no distractions, no sounds, no light. And I think the Random Thoughts will be the closest to our dreams, and where we are free to be who we are. And so maybe because of that, all that came into that music that starts very plain in a way, and that it develops into more, more bluesy, more jazzy elements, and that's how our thoughts are going and our dreams are going, because we start as we are now as a physical object, but we then just let go of that being physical and being more into tune with our souls and with our spirituality. And as you know, blues does come from many spiritual, it has a very big spiritual meaning into it. And that's how our dreams and our random thoughts in the early morning hours are. Because we are connected to ourselves, to who we really are. So I guess that's the answer.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. And so I hope we're going to ride out on that, right, Jeff? But
so Vlada, we really enjoyed your taking the time to talk to us again on Electrocasts.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me again. And I really enjoy sharing this part of me with you, musicians and friends and writers. And it's really great what you guys are doing. And I really appreciate your approach to my music and to music to many others that you interviewed before. So
thank you very much.
We want everybody to tell their stories. We want to give a chance for people to tell their stories, and we've heard lots of great ones in the past year that we've done this, so we're very happy. So, and we're happy for anybody who's listening, and thank you for spending time with us here with Vlada Mars this afternoon. And we're going to ride out on a track from her new album, Melancholy. Please do go get it. Go to vladamars.com, or you'll find it on iTunes and CD Baby slightly after May 31st. This is called Random Thoughts. Thank you for listening, everybody. Take care.
Check out those bluesy notes. Thank you, Vlada.
Bluesy notes.
Thank you.